On this panel today, we speak about the future of work. Young people, Liam included, were puzzled as to what on earth will they be doing ahead. The labor market is complicated. Young students face $15 an hour part-time jobs. Houses cost in the millions of dollars. There's all kinds of stress in the news. And the presentations that you're here today are going to shed light and clarity, because the world is changing, and the world is changing to keep you in the picture, to suit your needs, and to support you in pursuing a way to earn a living while maintaining yourself true to your values and your ideals. So with this, I will ask each of the panelists to introduce themselves, starting with Deborah, followed by Ejaz, and then Gary, please. So Deborah, please tell us who you are and why you're here.
Well, thank you very much for having me here, and it's a pleasure to be talking about this important topic. I am from New York City. I live in The Hague now, and I work in peace building. That's the most important thing to know about me at the moment. But I have a digital fluency lab that I have founded here in The Hague that promotes digital fluency and keeping people fluent and flowing towards the future. So I would submit that that's probably the most important thing right now in terms of the work that I do for what we're going to be doing here tonight. I'm also a business advisor and talk about design. I'm a clothing designer by trade for 2 decades on 7th Avenue in New York in the 80s and 90s. So I say that because I have lived through another major transformative period in history, which was supply chain transformation. Made in America and Europe, all made in China, the arc of my career. So watching and seeing how young people are going through such a transition now as we become more digitalized and more automated, et cetera, this is the perfect time to have these conversations about designing a better future starting right now. Thank you.
Ejaz?
Yeah, hi, thanks, Raziel. I am Ejaz Ahmed. Currently, I am Dean Faculty of Math and Science, and by training, I am a statistician, or nowadays there is much better word to call yourself data scientist. So I am a professor of statistics and data science, and I have been in academic all my life. So I worked in a bank before and here and there, but when I came to Canada, I started doing my master's. There was no time for me thinking. Right after master's, PhD before finishing, got a job at a university, and that's what I am. But I did lots of consulting work, and even I appeared in courts as a expert witness and things like that. So I have quite diverse experience. And being a statistician, we always say that you are in the backyard of everybody's house. So I have worked with people from different disciplines and background, and it's a two-way traffic. You know, I learned a lot from them. Only I rendered them my consulting experience, statistical consulting, but it's a two-way traffic. I learned them from a lot. So when I said in the morning, when Raziel connected me through a LinkedIn, and then after 1 hour, we have a telephone call, and he sold me this thing. I mean, I couldn't, when he said it's for young people, I said, that is it. Some people did for me, it is time to pay back. It's paying the debt. So I just, we got together on this forum, and here we are, and we got support of lots of people like you here, and the people who are listening. You know, those are the more important people then, you know. I usually say, you know, talking is silver, but listening is gold. So we have lots of participants here, but we would like to hear also from participants. And so I'm very happy to be part of this forum. Thank you, Raziel. Thanks, Deborah. And thanks, Gary, also.
Thank you very much, Ejaz. Gary, so could you please introduce yourself, and then you can launch straight into your presentation, and then we'll have a discussion afterwards.
Absolutely. So first off, Raziel, I really appreciate the invitation. As with Deborah and Ejaz, so much of my attention and thinking is focused on how we can help to prepare young people for a continually uncertain future, but clearly one that is affected by exponential change. So I have a number of different hats that I wear. I'm the author of a book called The Next Rules of Work, which is really trying to help people have some insights about the ways that the world of work is changing so dramatically. I'm the chair for the future of work with a group called Singularity University, which is neither about the singularity nor is it a university. So we have some identity problems that we're working on, not like Brock University. And then I've also got a number of courses on LinkedIn Learning with about 1.2 million learners, and I focus on topics like learning agility and learning mindset. And then finally, I do projects with people all around the world, focused on the future of work and the future of learning, often with young people. Literally just a couple weeks ago, my wife, who's also my business partner, and I did a workshop for Maori, a native New Zealand youth on the North Island of New Zealand, on the future of work with their teenagers. And so to me, this is, we say these are always unique times, but these are really unique times for young people. And so, especially when we talk about the intersection of our future and sustainability, I wanted to just offer a couple of thoughts. And you can think of these as sort of fire starters. They're just ideas, some images that I want to leave, especially young people here. I know that there are educators and hopefully employers that are also listening. But I want to speak specifically to young people and offer some insights for the ways that we think about how you can continually prepare yourself for a world of exponential change. So I'm just going to run through a series of images, and then hopefully this will just sort of set the table for the discussion with Deborah and Ijaz. So I mentioned sort of the different hats that I wear. I call this a portfolio of work, so I like to represent it so it looks like a portfolio. I didn't mention I also have a small software company called eParachute, and there's a marvelous book called What Color is Your Parachute that has become sort of the world's career manual over the past decades. That was actually written by my father, a recovering minister who ended up writing the world's career manual, and I was trained in his methods when I was 19. And so this gives me a variety of different lenses to be thinking about how these seismic changes are affecting the world of work, and especially in the context of sustainability. So here's the way I'd like you to maybe picture it, is to think about it, is each of us in our lives is on a journey. We have an arc. We grow from little bitty humans to older humans, and each of us has a unique path that we follow. And if you're a young person, if you've ever been to Disneyland, these maps that they have, there's a little circle that says you are here. So you are at this point in the arc, and what ends up happening is when you're early on, you can't possibly know the future, and so it's very uncertain, and it's hard to sort of fill in the blanks. Now, when you're older and you look back, of course, you know what the narrative is, you know what the story is. But when you're creating the story, when you're developing the story, it can have a lot of uncertainty associated with it. Well, the truth is that you live in an era of great uncertainty, depending upon your perspective and where you are and your circumstances. You're born in an era of exponential change. You might have been born during or after 9/11, and then along came this Great Recession, and then along came this virus. And so you know a world that's filled with really, really dramatic change. And many of your parents and their parents, they certainly knew some of these big impacts on the world, but maybe not coming as fast as they have been. You also probably have just a ton of technology in your life, like now. We're looking at screens, you're listening to me. And hopefully, as Ijaz was saying, I'm offering a little bit of silver before we have the gold of listening to you. But you have a lot of technology in your life. You have a lot of screens that you can look at, a lot of distractions. You probably have gotten the memo that there's some challenges with our planet. Your parents and their parents might not have quite seen it the way you see it, but I don't think there's a lot of opportunity to deny anymore that we're going through some really dramatic changes. And what's changing also are the rules of work. So your parents probably, certainly your grandparents, learned the old rules of work. They learned a way of working that sort of had three big phases to it. There was a period where you're going to learn. You're going to school. Maybe you got a vocational certificate. Maybe you got a degree, but you have this big chunk of learning, and then there's this big chunk of work, and your parents probably want you to get a safe job in a safe organization in a safe field. I'm not so certain that exists much anymore, but and then there would be maybe this third phase, depending upon where you were in the world and your circumstances, where you could retire. My father actually called these the 3 boxes of life, 3 phases of life. But those rules are changing, and I think they're changing pretty dramatically. The problem is you're at this front end. Maybe you're still in school, maybe you're not, but you know the rules of learning, or you're learning the rules of learning, and hopefully you're learning them fairly well. But then there's this uncertain box of work, and maybe you've already had a job or two, maybe you've done some work. But it's really important as we're thinking about these dramatic changes in work to try to understand sort of really what we're talking about. And so, what is work? What are we really talking about? How do we think about work? Well, everybody's got their own definition, but if you really want a pretty basic, simple way of looking at work is, at looking what people that will pay you to do work in the future, the way they think. Work is really just 3 things. It's a problem to be solved, and it doesn't matter if it's a sink full of dirty dishes, or it's a really, really big website that needs to be developed, or it's a new marketing strategy for a company, or a sustainability strategy for a community. There's a set of problems to be solved. How do we as humans, how do we solve problems? Oh, we perform tasks. You go to the sink, you get the brush, you start to clean. And then how do we perform those tasks? What makes us able to perform those tasks? We have human skills. So this is kind of it. This is kind of what work is. We have human skills, we perform tasks, and we solve problems. And this is why people pay us, is because they have problems that need to be solved, and hopefully we have the skills to be able to solve them. And skills are sort of on a landscape. I'll talk a little bit about that. But basically, you as a human being, for living as long as you have on this planet, you've developed a range of skills. You just might not really be all that aware of them. Now, let's put it in the context of a job. What do people want you to do in a job? Well, there's certain things you do for work, and we'll talk about what those are. There's where you work, when you work, who you work with, and why you do your work. And I'm going to focus on those first 4 briefly, but basically think of them as being sort of the components of a job. Now, in the old rules of work, certainly when a lot of people worked in factories, the what people did was sort of the same tasks, often in the same place. Where they did it would be the same location. Well, they might have the same commute getting to it. When they did it, people often did the same hours, and who they did it with, well, often the same people. Now, not every job was like this. In the United States alone, maybe 60% of jobs actually have some piece that has to be done on site someplace. But what you're finding in a lot of places is probably about half the workers are working not at a workplace, at least part of the time during a week. And so you're actually experiencing a tremendous change into what I call the era of flexible work. Well, what do you do in work? Well, sure, you solve problems. That's the most basic. But then you might also collaborate with others and create with others and co-create and brainstorm and so on. So that what of work can constantly be changing throughout a day, depending upon the kind of work that you're doing. Where you do it, well, originally it might have been the workplace, but now we found out many people can work from home, or you could be walking in a park with your coworkers, or doing it at a co-working facility or at a Starbucks. When you did work, now again, often in the old rules, it was always the same thing, 5 days a week, 9 to 5 or 9 to 6 or 9 to 10, depending upon your job. But now you have all of these different ways you could be working, times you could be working throughout a given week. And then who you worked with in the old rules, it was just the person in the cubicle next to you. And now it could be pretty much anybody that has access to the internet around the world. Half the people on the planet have regular access to the internet. So I think what ends up happening is you can kind of think of these as sort of sliders or changing context. 1 hour you could be co-creating in a co-working facility in the morning with a bunch of partners that your organization works with. And then in the afternoon, you could be doing problem solving, walking in a park in the afternoon with your coworkers. So these are sliders. Think of these as changing context in work. Now, Again, there's still old rules of work. There's still lots of jobs that are pretty static. And you do the same thing over and over again. But increasingly, we're entering into what I call the new era of flexible work. And if you think of the more choice that you have, the more control you have, the more opportunity you have in doing your work and choosing what, when, where, and with whom you work, you can think of that, just channeling what Deborah was talking about, as flow. If you are flowing into the future, if you're flowing into your work, Mike Csikszentmihalyi has a great book called Flow, where he talks about this constantly changing context and alternating rhythms in our lives. And if we have more ability to control that and to decide and to be able to optimize the what, the when, the where, and with whom we work, that just gives us a tremendous amount of flexibility. But here's the challenge is you're going to find there's some work you don't have a lot of choice. Just got to kind of go the place that the work is. You can't choose to deliver food to a restaurant table from remote, well, unless you've got some robots involved. So there's a lot of work you have to do in a specific context. But if you have opportunity to make decisions, if the work allows you that flexibility, well, then you need something that guides your work. You need something that is that magnet or that pull. And I call that your North Star or your Southern Cross. No matter where you are in the world, what is it that, just like the old seagoers, the mariners used to do, is they used to wait until it got dark and then they could find either the North Star or the Southern Cross up in the sky. And that would give them a general direction to know they were heading towards the right place. And it's true as a young in a world of exponential change. So I want to give you 4 different characteristics of what people look for when they try to pick out what that North Star is or that Southern Cross. The first is, and you might have already had your first job. My first job I had, here in San Francisco, actually when I was still in high school. I'll make an admission to you. I barely escaped high school. I had no interest in college. I don't have enough college to stuff into a thimble. So I just started working. And I found out pretty quickly you want to get paid well for it. I'm known around the world as Professor Gary, or by young people, anybody 25 and under, I'm called Uncle G. And I'll often get a call from a young person, Uncle G, I just got a job. And I'll say, oh, that's awesome. What are you getting paid? Crickets. I forgot to ask. Oh, okay, you'll find out in your first paycheck, because you just want to get paid for it. And then hopefully somebody takes you aside and they say, you know what, if you get really good at this, you'll get paid better. Okay, so these are the old rules of work. This is what your parents did, or this is what their parents did. They fed their families, they put a roof over their heads, and that was work, and that was just fine. And then my father, the recovering minister, came along 50 years ago, and he said, wait a minute. If I tell you that you could also do what you love, you could you focus on the problems that you love to solve, the skills you do, work with the people you love to work with, work in the kind of places you like to work, you might not have to trade off these other things. Well, maybe you do if you change fields or you need to really learn how to get good at something. But if you're also doing what you love, some aspect of your work is something that you love, you'll be far more directed. And then in the old rules of work, what you often found is, well, maybe when your parents or your grandparents retired, they might do what the world needs. Now, lots of people have worked in nonprofits or in government agencies or wanted to do things that the world needs as part of their work in the past. But the old rules of work were typically treating this like a ladder or a stack that you would move up. What about the next rules of work? How is it different for young people nowadays? Well, what I find is young people ask me all the time, starting off, what does the world need? You know that there's a lot of challenges in keeping our world sustainable. You've got one of these digital distraction machines that you can doom scroll on all day. You know the challenges that are happening around the world. You don't have to go find those challenges, they come to you. So many young people are saying, I want to focus on what the world needs with my work. And if I do that, that's what I love. If I love it, I'll get good at it. And if I get good at it, I'll get paid well for it. Now, this isn't true for everybody. There's lots of young people that want to go work on Wall Street and just make a lot of money and then hopefully have an impact in the world. But increasingly, more young people are, listen, I kind of want all these things. And And actually, some of you might recognize this is known as ikigai. In Japan, and especially in Okinawa, it's practiced by people who are considered to be some of the longest lived in the world. And so here's what I would suggest is think of this as an opportunity. It's a mindset. It's a way to think about how the world is changing and what your priorities can be. And especially when you look at the challenges you see in the world with the planet that we have, what are the ways that you might be able to actually have your own ikigai to be able to drive towards all those things? Well, how will you do that? Now I want to talk about the how, like what the mechanics are. Like that's wonderful vision. Now what would you do? Well, the old rules of work have changed pretty dramatically. And the way I think about it is those former 3 boxes that I talked about, it's become more of what I call a portfolio of work and learning. So you still go to school, you still hopefully learn something, but then you might keep learning online, and then you might get a day job, but then you take a gap month with your friends, and then you get another day job, but you're driving for Uber, and then you're working on a startup with your friends. Parents ask me all the time, why won't my young person, my kid get a real job? And the answer is it's a hedge. It's a portfolio strategy for a constantly changing world of work and learning. And so what is important is you build your own portfolio of your work. You might just get a single job, but it's really, really important to have that North Star Southern Cross that is pulling you, and to make sure that you get really good at it. So let me talk about how to do that and how you can make sure that part of your portfolio of work and learning will be for the planet. And I'm going to talk about mindset, skill set, and tool set. So mindset is how you prepare yourself to encounter situations, to solve problems, to interact with other people. And there are dozens and dozens of different mindsets. But if you want to put yourself in a position, if you want to prepare yourself for the broadest range of problems that you can solve, the most helpful way to position yourself, to develop your mindset, is to have a growth mindset. And there's a wonderful book by Dr. Carol Dweck called Mindset, where she talks about the difference between a fixed mindset, which is a little more of those old rules of work, and a growth mindset, which is a little more of these next rules of work. So the first deliverable is to focus on your own mindset and to continually see yourself as a growing and changing person, hopefully pulled by those passions that I was talking about. Second is skill set. Now what will end up happening is when you think of the range of skills, the landscape of skills that you can develop, if you think of the y-axis there as how good you are at something, from not very really good, and the bottom axis being that North Star Southern Cross, how much you love the work that you're doing, either not so much or a lot, well, you can kind of get the memo. The first cruddy jobs that you probably have to have, well, you might not love them that much, you might not be that good at it. But again, if somebody takes you inside and says, well, if you get really good at it, you get paid better. Okay. So again, old rules of work. But increasingly, in a world of exponential change, the more you can be driven by the work you feel you can have an impact on. And if you can keep on developing those skills, those can become your superpowers, the intersection of what you love and what you're good at. You just have to continually keep focusing on making sure that you get good at it so that people will pay you better. And of course, that upper right quadrant, that's where we need to keep moving, because obviously robots and software will do all that boring stuff. And increasingly, you need to be intentional about how to think about how the planet fits into building that portfolio of work. Now, here's the challenge. Remember, you're at that front end. You've got that big chunk of learning, but the future of work is actually sort of foggy, like you can't see that future. Well, there's a reason for that, and especially when we think about our own skills. There's a unique way that our minds work, is that each of us are kind of like icebergs. There's a little bit of skill that we can see. I kick the football and it comes back. I kick it, it comes back again. I might be good at football. But there's a whole range of skills when we solve a problem, when we climb a mountain, when we cross a lake. We think everybody else can do that. That's kind of the way a lot of our minds work. What happens with a lot of the young people, the ones who call me Uncle G, that I work with, they'll either say that they know everything or they know nothing. And unfortunately, a lot of times they'll say they know nothing. Well, no, you know lots of things. You're just developing those skills. And under the waterline is a huge amount of your human potential. It's just hidden to you because the development of those skills is a process. And there's still a lot of that development that come down the road. And so think of yourself as continually trying to build an understanding of what is below the waterline, of what you and probably even others may not be able to see, of all the potential that you have, all the skills that you can develop, all the kinds of problems that you can fall in love with and develop. And here's a way to think about it. If you could have waved a magic wand to solve that problem, imagine on the day that you were born, the nurse brings you to your parents and says, here's this beautiful baby, and oh, by the way, here's the user manual. Here's all the problems this baby is going to love to solve. Here's all the skills this baby is going to love to develop, the kinds of people this baby is going to love to be around, the places in the world this baby is going to know. Your digital distraction device, it has a user manual, doesn't it? It says what it's good for and what it's not, but where's the user manual of you? You don't have a user manual. You've got to build the user manual of you by trial and error, by focusing on following your passions. Often those passions, the things that you're curious about, are indicators, they're magnets that might draw you towards something you can actually develop a tremendous skill at solving particular kinds of problems. Now, if I'm going to wave my magic wand, and there are any 4 skills I would want to suggest that you focus on developing, there's lots and lots of skills you can develop, but I'm going to suggest 4. I believe that we all need to be problem solvers who are adaptive, creative, and with empathy. Problem solvers, because it doesn't matter if it's a dirty pile of dishes or a dirty floor, we have to solve problems, right? Adaptive, because you're in a world of exponential change. Creative, because that's another thing that'll keep you ahead of those robots and software. We're general purpose, creative problem solvers. And empathy, the ability to empathize with the needs of your coworkers, the needs of your customers, the needs of people in your community, the needs of the planet. This, it's PACE in English. Problem solvers are adaptive, creative, and empathy. This skill set is the skill set to solve the problems of today and tomorrow, and especially those of the planet. So I talked about mindset, skill set. What about tool set? All right, now there's all sorts of technologies, there's all sorts of techniques, there's things you could be using to be able to solve problems. And here I am in Silicon Valley, I'm in San Francisco. We normally lead with tool set like technologies. I'm not going to mention a single technology. I'm going to instead say there's a bunch of techniques you can learn to solve problems, to use your human creative problem solving skills to be able to come up with new ways to solve problems, especially challenges for the planet. First one is design thinking, where you empathize with the needs of a person, a population, a customer, the planet. And then you define, you ideate, you prototype, and you test solutions, hopefully in conjunction with them. At Singularity University, we talk a lot about moonshot thinking. You think you're done with your design thinking, and then some annoying voice says, wait a minute, how could we reach 10 times more people? How could we make this 10 times better for the planet? How could we make it 10 times cheaper? How could we produce 10 times less carbon? Moonshot thinking allows you to expand the aperture of the kinds of problems that you want to solve. I've done a lot of projects with Google since 2005, and Sergey Brin, Google's co-founder, he's fond of saying, I want you to shoot for Mars because if you miss it, you'll still hit the moon. Finally, if there's anything when it comes to solving problems for the planet, I would suggest you develop the tool set around ecosystem thinking, understanding ecosystems, whether it's the way that a city works so you can make it more sustainable, understanding the way that a community works so you understand how people collaborate together, understanding how markets work so you can hack markets for good, understanding how the planet works so that you understand that a solution that you're focused on can actually have a positive impact on the planet. Developing this tool set, having this toolkit of techniques to focus on problems is a tremendous set of assets as you go to prepare for the future. So I'm going to wrap up with a couple of thoughts about where you can focus these issues and give a couple suggestions for next steps. And then I'm looking forward to the discussion with Deborah and Ijaz. And I have to tell you, for all of you people who are listening, young people and not so young people, you don't have to agree with the thing that I'm saying. As a matter of fact, I hope this has sparked some thinking that you want to talk about, questions that you have that you want to submit to us, so we can focus on the facets of this diamond that you care the most. Okay, so where should you apply your mindset, your skill set, and your tool set? I'm going to give you 4 domains, and then I'm going to give you a set of potential follow-up action items. So I talk a lot about 4 domains: individuals, organizations, communities, and countries. And so as you're figuring out your thesis for the footprint you want to have in the world, for the changes you want to drive in the world, that doesn't have to be your thesis for life. It doesn't have to be your thesis even for the next 10 years. It simply has to be where you want to channel your human energies going forward. You could be focusing on what you do as an individual. You could just change your behavior so you're more sustainable, but if you want to have more impact, you can make that actually part of your work. You can be choosing to do work that actually has a positive impact on the planet, on communities. You could decide to do it in the context of an organization. If you're already working for a company, or you will be working for a company, at the most basic, you can have a voice. You can say what you think the company needs to focus on, what you believe its footprint needs to be in the world, or you can actually organize others. You can build the coalition of the willing in your organization to focus on what you believe are the challenges for the planet that the organization needs to address. You can do this in your community. You can look outside your door and you can see what needs to be done. If there's trash that needs to be cleaned up, or if you need to develop greater strategies for your community, one process where it is reducing its footprint on the planet and becoming more sustainable. And you can do that again just through your own behavior, but you'll have far more impact if you are organizing others and again, building that coalition of the willing. And then finally, some of you will want to focus on macro issues, on policy, on regional approaches to solving key problems, especially for the planet. I don't care which you start with or where you focus. All I would suggest is you have a thesis. You have an understanding of the ecosystem you most want to have an impact on. All right, so what should you do? What could you do next? I'm not going to tell you what, I'm going to give you some ideas for what you might do. And so let's start with educators, talk about employers, and then I'll finish with some ideas for young people. So educators, I just talked about, it's problems to be solved and developing skills. We need to have more project-based learning that is focused on real world problems that young people can address. So they get practice from the youngest age possible in looking at the world around them and developing the agency to be able to solve those problems, both individually and collectively. And there are these 21st century skills, especially as I just said, PACE, that we need to help them develop, and they're all trainable. What about employers? Well, I mentioned mindset. Well, it turns out you can hire people with the mindset that they want to be world changers. You can hire young people that have tremendous passion and energy that want to address these problems. You can develop your existing workers to help them to continually develop a 21st century skill set, because it turns out being problem solvers who are adaptive, creative, and with empathy is totally necessary and viable within the organization as well. And then finally, you can empower them with a tool set of techniques and technologies to be able to actually put those changes into action. And then finally, for young people, I'm going to give you a suggestion for 4 steps, 4 categories of things to focusing on. All right, so it's really important to have a thesis. What do you believe the world needs? It doesn't have to be what anybody else believes, but if it is something you see that others believe, then you can help to amplify their work. You can build that coalition of the willing together. Secondly, it's critical over and over again when I counsel people who are older, they somehow lost their ability to be passionate and be curious. Stay passionate and curious. Continually find problems that you love to solve and skills that you love to use to solve those problems. And then make sure you get really good at solving those problems and using those skills so that people want you to pay well for it. Dean Kamen, the inventor of the Segway, he once told me his artist father gave him only 2 pieces of advice. Find something you love to do and get so good at it that people will pay you well for it. So this is a tremendous opportunity in this world of flexible work to be able to find or create that work. It's just you've got to commit to mastery. You've got to commit to building tremendous skill set to be able to solve those problems. All right. So that's my sort of thesis. That's the general setting of the table that I wanted to suggest. So I'd love to just use that as a jumping off point for the discussion with Deborah and with Ijaz.
How do youth best access people in positions, to earn these chances at a job? Because they're certainly fighting AI-driven recruitment at this point with keywords. And so what works for you, this panel? What kind of messages are noticed by people who can actually provide solid opportunities at meaningful work? I know, Raziel, you said you just reached out to someone in the past, and I think now with the competition that might be happening more, or maybe it doesn't happen at all, and maybe that's the trick. I think that's what they're asking.
Yeah, so I'll attempt to answer this question. I'm sure I'll probably navigate around a little bit. So I would submit that so how do we do it? It sounds like the person is asking how, with the fact that we've got algorithms that hire people. Basically not hire people, but algorithms get you in the first gate, right? And we all know, I think all the young people here know that you have to work the algorithm. It's just a reality. You have to get you got to get your words correct. You've got to hit all the marks so that you get through that first gate. I think that isn't a problem for young people, actually. I think that in my experience, what's really more problematic is then when you get through that gate, how do you get through the next gate, which is to get hired? And then even more so, I think, Gary, to your point where you started, why work in the first place, right? And I think one of the things that I really wanted to say while you were giving your presentation is financial independence feels good, and having the idea that you can have financial independence and not be dependent upon society or parents or have a lot of fear in your life because you can't afford to live. Let's get brass tacks. That's one of the biggest reasons to work, to have some financial independence. Working things you love, that is going to come over time. So I think my answer, this is the last part I wanted to make about the point I wanted to make, is somebody gave me phenomenal advice when I graduated in 2019 with a degree in international studies. It was after years of having it's a third reinvention in my life. And she said, get into the middle of the orbit of the thing that you love, and it will come to you. And that's what led me to the Hague, because I am a peace builder. And peace building is basically one of the brand identities of the city in peace and justice. And since I have been here, it has been much easier to find work, align with people that are doing the work that I want to do. And as an entrepreneur, it has been very successful. So that piece of advice is find a get in the middle of that orbit and then watch it start coming towards you. It'll be everywhere that you reach out. So that would be my answer. Hand the mic to you, Sayed.
Yeah, Ijaz, there's actually another question. Maybe you could add when you add your own piece here too. This came in from the audience. It's regarding what should young people do if they want to have the aim for a future where humans really make decisions and take decisions. And he's specifically worried about AI kind of making all these decisions in jobs. He's looking for maybe roles with agency.
Okay, thanks, Justin, and thanks for the question. It's a very important and interesting question. We are living in the era of AI. So, but somehow we missed that this AI also created by human beings. So Gary talked about the human skills. So I was later on, if we have time, I will talk about the human skills, and he also talked about the wealth. It's in terms of mining and agriculture. People used to say the wealth is under your feet, but no longer. No more wealth is under your feet only. The wealth is between your ears. So this is very important that we have to learn the basic knowledge and especially in basic science. So that's what, we all want to do, the soft skill or hard skills. So in the era of AI, to come back to that question, AI can be incorporated with human intelligence. There is no replacement of human intelligence. So otherwise AI can make all these decisions, what human beings are doing. So of course, AI can take the learning from the human brains and is goes to AI. But for example, GPS, if you are using a GPS, if only you rely on GPS, you get into trouble. So human intelligence can be incorporated with all AI things. Parking your car through, but if you are in the car, if you feel something, so human intelligence cannot be replaced. That's my bottom line. So we don't need to worry with the AI. So only thing is that the skills are changing. People say there are lots of jobs, but are there lots of people who can do these jobs? So again, coming back to the Gadico, what basic tools, what basic education we need to get this job? You go to even a small stores, all cashiers are going away, tellers are going away, and machines are taking over. So there will be jobs. There will be no worry. There will be enough job for everybody. But the problem is, do you have a skill? So again, mindset point coming. Do we have a skill to take job? Are you prepared? Opportunities comes to prepared mind. Are we prepared? As a young person or as an older person, because these things are dynamic. They are changing. It's not even my own things. Like I talked earlier, I was a statistician. I was doing classical theory. I was supervising students, writing papers, giving talks here and there. But then this big data array came. So whole thing has to be changed. So I have to change myself with to get some new skills myself. So this is important that with the machine intelligence, the human intelligence is still there. All we have to figure out where things are going. And also it has to be adaptive. Things are good for now 10 years. Some new things will come in next year, 10 years. So we have to be very adaptive.
Yeah, and let me add another point, since I have a digital fluency lab in The Hague. And I think that the AI, the fear of the AI and the idea that the human is going to be taken out of the equation is something you just don't succumb to. That's not going to happen. It's going to be always machine learning and human beings interacting. So interoperability is one of the most exciting words, I think, for the future, because the system design, like Gary, you were saying, ecosystem, right? Get an ecosystem mindset. I think young people understand, who've been playing video games their whole lives, that they're in a global environment speaking the lingua franca of English. And they understand the system design, even just in the digital realm, right? So I know that was a bit of a jump around, but I think you guys will understand what I'm saying. So I really think that the concept of fearing is unnecessary. Fear less, not be fearless, just fear a little bit less. There's time to panic later. I think one of the most exciting things about the future is the fact that we're going to have interoperability, that we're going to have much better design in the systems. I'm a designer, thinking of systems with accountability and tracing and blockchain technology, et cetera, is going to eliminate a lot of the continual betrayal of the world of work in terms of all the bureaucracy that we get stuck in, streamline a lot of that. Very exciting going forward. And I think also this idea that we're in an interconnected world now. We are, and this is a thrilling time to be alive, I would submit. Of course, it's also got the news feed every day trying to scare us out of our wits, and God forbid you're in a war zone, then you are scared. But for many of us, probably many on this call, we have one of the best opportunities on the most cutting edge periods of the next 100 years to embrace this time right now. And this is the thing I want to say now. Last point on this. Young people will be the reverse mentors, right? Young people have been growing up with what Gary, you were calling it the digital distraction device. It's not for young people. It's their gateway into the world, right? It's their book, it's their music, it's their camera, It's their menu, it's their Uber ride, it's everything, right? It's not necessarily just a device for distraction, yet it's a window to the world. And I think that for young people that are natives to this technology, expect the people in the 50 and above crowd. Okay, I'm 60. Expect us to see you as a reverse mentor, because we know that you're coming in well equipped and in many ways more equipped than us for this transition. So stand your ground, learn how to make, to make your place in a very sort of, I would like to use the word elegant way, thinking of where is my parachute, right? And use elegance and beauty to be a reverse mentor, because the world of work is changing and the age is flipping. And I think everybody here on this panel and at the forum, Raziel, that you've created here, the LIAMforum, we are embracing the fact that we're here to serve, we're here to support, and we will try to open doors for you. So we're ready. So it's an exciting time. I just wanted to add that.
Beautiful words. We have a couple more minutes, and what I want to Gary the last word, but I want to convey to Gary, I still believe in contacting people. The AI and all this other stuff is wonderful, but still it's a very important skill to be able to call somebody, write to somebody, and be values-driven, honest, direct, clear, and people will respond to you. And if they don't respond to you, you just dial the wrong number. It doesn't matter. Go on to the next one. So Gary, with that, I want to ask you to please close the panel, and thank you all, by the way, Deborah, Ejaz, and Gary, for this panel. Gary?
Oh, absolutely, I really appreciate it. So, so first, I just wish I had more time to learn from Deborah and Ejaz. So, I'm sorry I'm so short. So, I'll probably just end on that one note of empathy. So, the one skill that we really didn't talk about is, I think ultimately one of the things that is so amazing about this coming generation is that you have such an awareness. So many of you have such an awareness. As Deborah said, this is your access to the world, and we sort of didn't have that level of access to the world when I was young. It's continually anchoring that in empathy, in understanding the needs of the people in your community, the people that you have never even met, and continually becoming passionate, deeply committed to solving the problems of people and planet is the most tremendous opportunity that I think any generation has had.